From every strand on the line of your reel, to the rods, to the anglers, to the lures on the end of your hook, let's talk about those big bass here on Co-Angler's Corner with your hosts, Rob Welch and John Stoudinger.
Good evening, everybody. I'm John.
How y'all are? Cajun Rob here hanging out with you.
Nice. I didn't laugh that time.
I try not to. I try to think it smooth. Hey, that's funny. Facebook kicked you out of both your accounts. You gotta love it, man. It makes no sense how it does sometimes.
I don't know, man. It's crazy, but it is what it is. As long as we're continuing having fun and.
Oh yeah, it'll kick back on here in a minute.
Yeah, I think it's kicking us out of everything. So.
Yeah.
But we'll get there.
It happens. It happens.
So we have a guest tonight, Nick Dane. He's originally from Virginia, fished tidal water most of his life. Got talked into going a little bit further south. And now he's in Florida, outside of Palatka, Florida, I guess, right?
Yep.
And so we'll bring him in and let him talk about tidal water fishing. I mean, I know a couple things about it. High tide, low tide, slack tide, tide up, tide down. As far as anything else, I'm done.
Yep. We got the guru tonight, guys. So bring your pen and pencils and your notebook paper because we got the guru on the tidal waters.
And let's get some questions answered, all right?
Let's do it.
All right, let's bring Nick in here.
How's it going, Phyllis?
Hey, Nick. How's it going, buddy?
Good.
Ooh.
Can't complain. I'm upright and vertical, so that's the first
Hey,
thing.
that's absolutely correct.
Yes, sir.
Now, I think I heard something about a guru. That I got to say, some days out there running tidal water, you feel like go ahead and just put me on the Elite Series right now, and we're going to go ahead and win it all. And the next day, you're like, man, I think the boat will pull some pretty good money right now. So,
Yep.
Guru, maybe. I don't know if I go that far. Alrighty. Oh, I see.
Still there?
You got a first comment coming in.
I didn't see it.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, I see it. And, well, we can talk about that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we want to start there.
Let's change some people's minds.
Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
Hey, I got a boat that says and some I got a boat and some spots that'll tell you otherwise. I can promise you that one.
All right. Nice. All right, guys. We're all up on Facebook now. Finally got everything straightened around.
Yep. All up and running.
Yeah. Florida fish stories. Maybe not all the time.
It's definitely a seasonal fishery. And also just understanding the bait that's in that river, but we'll cover that one.
Yeah. So if you don't mind starting a little bit about your background, and we'll go from there.
Oh man, I'm now 23 in July. I'll be hitting 24, so I'm pretty young in the game. Started young. I grew up in a small from coastal Virginia, in a small town where the only thing really to do that sparked my interest was a lake behind my house, and I would walk. I think it was 23 miles. There's a trail around it, and I would hit at 23 miles any given Saturday or day I had off for school. Pretty much from when I could walk, my daddy had me in fishing. I mean, it started off saltwater, and for me, that got too easy for the little coastal town that I was in, and I got more interested in freshwater, and it just peaked from there, and it's spiraled out of control, so to speak. But it's been the best thing I think I could have done with my life. Definitely kept me out of a lot of stuff young. Which is the importance of getting kids out there. So for me, I started off my home lake was a little lake called Lake Maury in Newport News, Virginia. Family had land back in the mountains of Virginia, so I consider Lake Anna and really my home lake, and that's really where I consider to be home from is on Lake Anna, because that's really what taught me. I learned a lot out there fishing just in general, because that's an old school kind of power and finesse lake. So you get anywhere from throwing a white spinner bait to a trick worm on Texas rig, and you're gonna catch fish. So that's a little bit about my background. I've worked for the work field that I'm in. I've traveled from Virginia down to Georgia, set up in North Georgia, right on Lake Lanier, on the banks of Lake Lanier, and Man, for a good couple of years, I traveled as far west as Toledo Bend and as far south as Okeechobee, and I've got everything in between in the Carolinas. I've seen almost all of it. Can't say I'm an expert in all of it, but been well versed in a lot of it.
Nice.
Absolutely.
And then, and in addition, can't forget about the James River up there. I can't say that I love the James River as much as I do the St. John's. That one's a bittersweet one, but I do love it. I got to shout it out. That's where I learned first through a ride at. So
cool.
A little bit about my background.
All right.
Excellent. So I'm in New York, and we only have, I think, one tidal water, and that's the Hudson River. But we do have some bigger bodies of water and things like that. So what's the first thing you should learn about tidal fisheries?
So
what would you think?
The thing that is the hardest with tidal fisheries, most of them are connected to saltwater at some point or an outlet for salt water.
Yep.
One of the first thing that you need to understand is that you're going to see some stuff from saltwater that's going to push into this freshwater. So you're going to understand that you're going to have a lot more forage. So if it comes from, you're going to have your traditional, you're going to have your traditional American shad, you're going to have your threadfin, that's going to be naturally in pretty much all of our freshwater. Then you have to add on, I call them the little tiny saltwater minnows. We call them glass minnows out here on the river. And glass minnows, you're going to have, all sorts of eels will press up into freshwater. You have a lot of, in addition to bait that's already present for those fish, in addition to crawfish and stuff like that in freshwater, then you have even more from salt. So you're also throwing in there that more bait. So you're gonna have to understand what they're foraging, especially based off of time of year. So that's gonna be key. I'm gonna circle back to that one because there's a great point for the St. John's. I'll circle back to there. That I'll get into a little bit deeper later. I'll save that one for my back pocket. Second would be understanding the tides and timing of tides, which is going to be the hardest thing that you can possibly do.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're going to have to, the best thing you can do for that, and especially as learning, there'd be days where you get out on the St. John's River and you won't catch, especially even if you're learning or just running tournaments. And even right now for me, I have an idea where to go, but you never really truly know. The water's going to dictate where the fish are. So, on tide cycles and everything, but the most important thing is understanding where the tide is at and having a true point. So I'm from a military base family. So I have my true north and my true south. So if I know my boat ramp is going to be, I want it dead center of the furthest north I plan on running and the furthest south. So that way I know, hey, if I'm in a theoretical map, it's right here. And this is north and this is south. And I'm right here. If that water's coming from this way at me, if I'm coming out of the boat ramp and that water's coming at my boat this way, then okay, that's for the St. John's. In that case, that would be an incoming water. The water's coming in, it's going to fill up. So any place that we have fish to go hide, St. John's has lost its eelgrass, now has lily pads. So what we're looking at is, okay, so they're going to be in the backs of those pads. I need to go somewhere where they're going to be off, maybe a little more offshore, where I can have access to those fish without actually going and having to get up in those lily pads where I have a lower percentage chance of getting them. But then if my boat's right here and I have water coming this way, it's going out. So I say, okay, that's really, on the St. John's in particular, I go bingo. Let's go fishing pads. I like shallow fishing. I like structure. I like pads. It's high percentage areas. So I'm going, all right, let's go fish. We're not going to want to hit those shell bars offshore. We're going to want to go a little bit tighter on those lily pads. So that's the best way. That's the number one start. If you can understand that early, you can put together at least something. You don't feel like you're reaching and grabbing for something. You can get settled in. And then, of course, then after that, of course, we have technology nowadays. Tap in with your tide chart. Talk to a local bait shop. Say, hey, what's the most accurate tide chart that y'all found? And tap in with that local knowledge. I'm not telling you if you're tournament guys and you can't get information to do that, but there's nothing really against that. What's the most accurate tide chart? Or at least try to figure it out. And not at any time that you can't trust on it fully, because at any time you could be an hour off or the conditions. If you have a northern wind in the St. John's, it's a little bit backwards. This is the elevation of Florida. Down here in the south, like we're going towards Miami, is a higher elevation than down here in Jacksonville. So this river runs opposite. It's backwards. So then if I know if I have a northern wind coming in, it's going to slow down that tide coming out. So I'm going to have to run further south to get that stronger tide that I'm looking for. So it's just knowing your points, having that true north, true south, finding out the good tide chart, and then, of course, from there, running your weather conditions like you would on any other lake. So that's the initial keys. That's going to put the key in the ignition, turn it over. Now you just got to put it in drive, and that's going to be water time. Oh, yeah. Water time, especially anywhere you have current. Because those fish will, I'll say, I always have the theory the fish will find you if you put time out there on the water. You don't find them in current because they'll be at one spot one day and they'll be 30 yards down next. So it's just time.
So do you find that the fish move a lot during the different tides?
So there is a drastic swing. We will see I know if going into the day, if I have some incoming water, fish are going to most likely be pulling out from if we have incoming water, that water's moving those fish closer to the bank. Now, in outgoing water at the beginning, it's going to start sucking them out of the pad, sucking them off the bank. And throughout the time in the process of the tide, I'm going to go out. I'm going to start looking on the shell bars in the main part of that river because I'm going to have to transition with that water. That water moves them back and forth, up and down. And then, of course, you put that together. And then, of course, you have to look at the depths of water because if you're on the St. John's, at least you have a 3-foot tidal drop.
Right.
So you can be up in water that's going to be 3 to 4 foot deep on high tide. It's barely going to be any water on it on low. So you're just going to move you just kind of got to move with the water. If I'm middle of outgoing water, I'm probably going to want to be on those shell bars. They're going to start lining up on those shell bars. That's where I'm going to look. If I'm at almost dead slack tide, I'm definitely going to be on the shell bars. I may even start heading back a little bit closer to the bank because they might be there. So it's just all kind of lining up where exactly the water's at and roughly moving off of the structure and kind of swinging with it, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yep. Now, if you got like a drought condition, does the salt water move more further in already? And the opposite end, you have a flood, does it push the fish way out, or how's that work?
So I'll tell you, some of the best fishing I've ever done was right after a hurricane.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you, there's some of the best because we have a mass push of fresh water up against the bank. It's easy because you just go find banks and walls somewhere that's going to hold that water. And 99% of the time, you're going to find a load of 30 fish in there. And you're just throwing bait at them. But also it can make it tough, too, because we have a lot of grass banks. And we have a lot of swamps in there, depending on where you go. So these fish could be 3 foot back from running water in cypress knees. And you can just see them knocking the mess out of shad. And you're just like, well, guess you just got to tie on the 80-pound braid and a fluke and pray for the best.
Yep.
The big old broomstick. That's really about all you can do in that situation. But that's good. Extreme low, it's kind of like, makes it almost like fishing in a bucket anytime you get extreme drawdowns, especially when you see lakes like out west do it too. And sometimes in Georgia, you get extreme drawdowns during the winter. You just kind of go to those spots that are going to be offshore. And then when that plays into high and low tides, when we have drought-like conditions, it happens in the summer where you get really low on occasion. You just start focusing more offshore with moving water for that colder water. And then you play the tides and you play the pressure. So the higher pressure, of course, are going to be deeper in that cooler water. So you might have to go from what normally on your I like to run Humminbird. I work for them. I strongly believe in Humminbird.
Yep.
Their side imaging and their mapping is just elite in my opinion. Love Garmin for up front, but if you want to know what's going on down there, you got to have a Humminbird. That's a shameless plug. They don't sponsor me whatsoever, but I would love that one day if that could happen. But it's just finding, if I know usually my ideal range is going to be in that 7 to 10 foot, I'm going to probably look, the river's down about 4 foot right now. I'm going to add 4 foot on there, see if I can't find any shell bars or see if I can't see anything that would break up the current and act as an eddy, which we'll have to go in a little more detail on that one, which acts as an eddy, which is basically a spot where there's a difference in bottom.
Yep.
But what it's like, I try to equate it to my customers and my guests that I have on my boat. It's like basically it's a calmer spot in the water. I've never seen a guy like me, a big guy, run on a treadmill eating a cheeseburger. Fish aren't going to do it either. They're not going to earn energy to gain energy. So you just
they might in New York.
That's another breed up there.
Yep.
I'll stay down here. I'll stay down here unless we're talking about some of those 6-pound smallmouth they got up there. Then I'm interested. But that's what we're looking at there. Is this they're just somewhere for them to lay up, and that's where most of the shell bars are. Is places where there's not as much tide or not as much current hitting, so they're not having to fight, and they can just sit there and pick off schools of bait, whatever's in the river, so that way they can go refeed and then move, of course, accordingly to go find some more bait.
Okay. Do you ever, or how do I say this? Like, I hear some people say, I want to go to the place that has the least tide movement.
Just really depends.
You know what I mean?
It really depends. There has to be a specialized kind of bite going on there.
Okay.
So that's a double-edged sword. It's never done me well. Now, if they know something that I do, I will happily hop on the back of their boat and learn. I've never had a lot of luck. Now, given if there's a hard shad spawn on St. John's River, I'm talking outside of St. John's River, the only time and place I've seen that was a real rough shad spawn, and the shad were getting away from the current so they could go spawn. Yep. That's the only time I've seen that. And what I did is I created some current because I'd go out. I looked like an idiot, but I ran out there and ran 360s around them. And Spook got them shad all balled up and tossed around and turned around. And I went out there. They came up school and we caught them. That's the only time that I've seen that. But even then, when it comes to our tidal rivers, they're naturally going to go where there's that lack of current, which is kind of what I guess they're saying. But if you're trying to catch bass, especially in natural currents, you want that moving water because that's where the bait's going to be at. These fish are super smart. I mean, nowadays we're seeing them in the river where you borderline can't run your live or 360 or sonar if you pull up on a school of them in the summer when they're offshore. You got to turn it off and you got to cut your motor off about 15, 20 yards before you get to them and just coast on in and hope for the best. Because if you circle back around on them, you're not too sure where they're sitting at. They're going to hit the highway on you.
Yep.
It's so naturally they're going to be where that moving water is. These fish adapt. These are some of the smartest fish I've seen. I mean, in these recent years, it sounds crazy when I say that, but these fish are catching on to us.
Oh yeah.
So we're having to figure out different ways to catch them. But naturally, that still water, those fish, there's no bait there in that still water. That bait's going to get funneled and moved by water, and where that bait's at, that's where the fish are going to be at. So especially in St. John's River, if someone says they're catching them on slack water, that's just dock talk. They're just trying to get to you. They're trying to make you run bad stuff all day.
Yeah. Well, they've run into it in Dale Hollow. I fished a couple of tournaments on Dale Hollow, and the guys I fished with a couple scope, and it says we're having to throw further and further out to get to them.
Yep.
And even halftime, they're like real finicky. So, they're starting to see it up here too.
They very well might be there. They might stay there. They might have something that the fish are keyed in on with some patterns. Like, believe it or not, there's a fish that I got the chance to nickname because I called him Trespassing Bass. It was literally a staple of my guide trip. I kid you not, it was the best gimmick I could have possibly had. There's no trespassing sign on this one dock, and it was a perfect spot for the current to hit in their beating eddy.
Yep.
I kid you not. I guess seed pattern. It's in the summertime. I can go out there probably in about 2 or 3 more weeks when we hit June. I'll go catch them again because I guess it's just the way the shad move or the bait moves or the shiners move through the river. But you'll have some bass that will stay there that they just get on a pattern where they know where the bait's going to be at, and they'll stay there. I call them no trespassing bass. You throw yourself a shiner or a worm up by that sign, I guarantee you he's coming out of there.
He's hanging in the shade as something goes by.
Yep, he's just hanging out right there until he has some more food. It's one of the craziest things I've seen day in and day out. Because the reason what put me onto it is I thought, hey, it's just a little pull up spot, with some good current. But I started noticing the hook marks in the fish's mouth. I was like, that's pretty fresh. And it just started the next day. I went back there about an hour later. So man, that fish got a hook mark in it. It's like, man, that fish got another hook mark. All right, I think this is the same fish right here. But I've seen that. I mean, I'm sure there's some fat bass that hang around. You'll get some bass that tend to get a little more stationary because there's so much bait, but typically not ideal conditions. You're going to want to stay away from dead water. You're going to find something moving. The more movement, the better, I tend to find.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about baits. Well, no, let's hold on a minute, because baits is a very big subject.
Yep.
Topic, I should say. People talk about brackish water, salt water, brackish water, fresh water. Would you say to try to stay away from the brackish water because the higher salt content?
So, where I fish at, if you run north of Palatka is when it starts to get a little bit of salt mixed in, but even then, it's not a whole lot of amount.
Yep.
My biggest indicator is based off of plant growth or vegetation. I'm going to want to stay out of it where I start to see scattered lily pads. Now, you can run up north. There's a place called Doctor's Lake up there. There's some fish in that, but it gets a little too salty for my likings to go up there. But in the right time of year and the right spot, I'll go run up there. It's a long haul, but it's worth it. It can be worth it. I'm not saying they're not there, but you're going to have to find where some fresh water's coming in at. It's not. Okay. There might be some there, but it's not going to be as good, and the fish just don't seem to be as healthy. It's not something I'm going to throw in my live well and count the day on.
Yep.
That makes sense. It's not something I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to really key in on these fish up here in a little more brackish water. Now, when the right time of year comes around, which I'm going to get to a little bit more, there is some times where I will risk it a little bit more because of what's coming into the river. And We'll get to that with baits. So.
Now, do you have a lot of crab that kind of filters down the river a little bit of blue crab?
If you ever take a ride on the St. Johns River, you just follow the locals, because there's a bunch of crab pots out here. And that is a huge forage, especially when we start getting into the later months of the year. That is a huge forage for them. Okay. One trip, I'll never forget it. I was going to net about an 8-pounder for a guy. It was a great trip. The dude had brought a son that could catch fish too. Wow. I mean, he was excited about fishing. The kid was fired up for it. Never forget it. We're throwing big old shiners. They wanted a shiner trip. That's what you come to Florida for. I'll be honest with you. That's what you got to go to Florida for. If you take it
absolutely,
it's good. It's great. But take you a shiner trip. You'll see something you've never seen in your life. I kid you not, he had probably about a 12-inch shiner in his mouth, and he caught that big old female in my live well. We put her in the live well so the kid could take some pictures, but there was a school of fish out there. In my live well, it coughed up a blue crab claw, probably about that long.
Jeez.
She's still eating.
She's eating up.
It's Mark Zona calls it Jurassic Park out there, and it is, because I'll be honest, in St. Johns River, you throw out, you feel a bite. I've learned. I told people, I said, if it feels little, it's not.
Yeah.
Because some of the biggest fish I've caught out there felt like a little lethargic 1-pound largemouth, and you get it up to the boat and all heck breaks loose. You just hold on.
Comes alive, yeah. I hear you.
You're in trouble, man. But yeah, it's blue crab forage is huge. It's huge out there. Not to mention the industry is huge out there too. They're a bunch of crab pots out there, and sometimes they're fish indicators too. I'll use those if I'm in a rock and a hard place. I'll line up with some crab pots. We'll see what happens.
I heard that. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, Cajun man, you need to stay away from those crab pots. You'll end up getting shot.
Oh yeah, you in South Louisiana, you mess somebody's crab pot, you got problems. You'll have problems.
There's trust me. If you get a little too close, them crabbers thankfully know me and know the guys that run the river and got on the river. But you get a little too close from, you'll get a side eye, and I don't know if I'll mess with them old boys. They got arms of them probably about that big from pulling them pots up, and you're like, y'all can. I'll move. We're good.
And they're out there every day. And they're out there every day. So
you'll be split up for crab bait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll offer some help. I mean, you'd be surprised how many times you'll get a dead eel choked up on the boat. Go take it over to them. Here, you want this?
Oh yeah, that's good stuff.
Good stuff, man. The bass down there. That's another big forage for them on the St. Johns is our eel.
Yep.
It's crazy what you can throw out there, and you'll see them. I had one spit one live one up on my boat, and I was like, oh, this gonna be interesting here. Do I use it? I'm like, do I use it for live bait again, or do I just let this one be? I had to make a game time decision. So I threw it back. I didn't know the regulations of FWC on that one, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna leave that one alone.
Yeah, play it safe. There you go, man. Play it safe.
Got to.
New York, you can't fish with frogs, but it's awful tempting.
Oh yeah,
that's something I love down here, especially if you're watching what's going on
live frogs, I should say.
Oh,
yep.
I can't say I've ever done that one, but I'd hate to see what they do to it on Toho right now with the way Jordan Lee's doing them down there. My gracious.
OKVD caught a 7.7 down there today.
It's I could talk on that place, not as long, but I could talk about that place from my few. I haven't got a chance to fish a lot. I'm a little bit closer to Harris Chain. That's more of a day trip. Toho's probably a couple day trip. Something I'm going to hit for a 2 to 3 day weekend just because it's such a blast. Catch a bunch of numbers, but then when you find them good. Like we're seeing those 60-pound bags KVD got, and Jordan Lee running away with the tournament right now. Over 80 pounds. There's been days where I pulled up out there and had a dirty 30 in 30 minutes. It's just that quick in Florida. That's the beautiful thing about it.
But I've fished open there before, and I actually went on a guide trip one time, and a guide told me that you can't put out stake beds or brush piles. Said they'll gig you. And one of the ones they got out, they got a little buoy, above them. But yeah, they're strict on that.
Very, especially putting into the wildlife out there. You're really not supposed to put anything in that water unless it's permitted. And then but even then, they don't want you throwing out brush piles or nothing like that.
Yeah,
I can't speak for if that's upheld or not. Now I haven't done it because that's a long way for me to put out a brush pile. But from what I've seen on side imaging, they're out there.
Oh yeah, few extras out there. Yeah, accidentally.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a couple accidental brush piles fell off the side when they're trying to clear out their land and move it over to the mother land. I'm sure that's happened 100 times at least.
And believe it or not, down one of the canals, I think it's on the next lake up, there's a bison that hangs out. Because it's funny, my buddy from Cincinnati texted me, says, "What in the world is this?" And he thought it was turned away from me. He thought it was a stump. He was about to flip to it and moved, turned, and looked at him. Freaked him out. I said, "Man, it's a bison. Where are you at?"
My favorite part down there is I was fishing just for fun down there. And I kid you not, it's just the crack of dawn. I was like, all right, let's go ahead. Let's get after it today. I saw some fish on the live scope. I was like, it's going to be a good day. I'm seeing some blobs on live scope. I threw a frog up there, and all of a sudden I hear an elk bugle out there. You would want to talk about probably almost out the boat. Now, it was close, too. When I see that thing come over the hill, I'm like, I did not expect that in South Florida.
No.
They got bison, elk out there in certain spots. It's like, okay, all right.
Yeah, the story was, some guy had a bunch of animals, and he sold the place, and he just kind of left the bison out there. So yeah.
Hey, I guess they're trying to bring him back in Florida.
Maybe so. They did. They have around here. It's kind of crazy.
It's on Lake Kissimmee.
Yep.
Called Rama Island. Lots of exotics on it.
Yep. I must have been it.
Island too. Locals probably ain't gonna like me for saying that, but good fishing out there too.
Yeah, it is. Awesome place.
Someone's giving your spots away.
Cannot tell a lie.
Yep.
So me being in New York, and we've talked about, I don't have very many tidal fisheries in my area.
Mm-hmm.
Where would be the first, if I was coming down, what would be the first thing you would look for? I mean, you'd check out the tide chart, find out what's coming in, when the incoming, when the outgoing. Is there usually a certain depth range that the tide flows, or tide goes up and down? Does that fluctuate all the time, or?
Yes, on average, it's going to be about 3 foot.
Yep.
Now,
okay.
I'll circle back to earlier. If you have a southern wind for us, usually that's would stop up. Usually, southern wind would increase. southern wind and northern wind are really keys, and even sometimes a northwestern or northeastern wind will also mess with us a little bit, but more so north and south for on the St. John's. If I'm going out on St. John's and I know that I have a hard northern wind, I'm probably going to go where my tide's a little less into play. So anywhere south of Walika, a lot of people see Walika on like Bassmasters. A couple years ago, Scott Furter caught a bunch of fish back in Walika, and a lot of guys run past and go down to Lake George. So anywhere from Walika south, I'm going to start playing into a little more because I know it's going to be they're going to have shorter current times, and it's going to be a little less affected by that wind. Now, if I have a south wind, I'm going to stay up north towards Palatka, and I'm going to start running the tide because that north, if I have that north more of an, I need to switch that. I got backed up. So north wind, I'm going to run south. A south wind, I'm going to start playing into. I'm going to play into that southern wind on outgoing water, and really, really, really hammer down on those shield beds and take advantage of that all that bait getting sucked out because you're going to start having schools of anywhere between 15 to 60 fish out on the shell bar. Dang. You'll go out there and you'll just see dot, 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 and you'll see bait with them. And you can borderline see as you side scan, you can see that fish come up off the bottom on them. And you just know, just go ahead and kill the motor, put on the spot lock, and just throw where you saw them because it's about to go down.
Absolutely.
That's where I'm. From when it comes to weather effect, that and anytime you have high pressure front, you know you're just going to slide back off. So when you have that tidal influx, it's just going to have to on average 3 foot, but a hard north wind is going to not have as much influx. It's going to let less out. Yep. So it's like, think of it this way. Best way I was ever told how to think of it is imagine if you were putting this a little more old school sock in a sink drain.
Yep.
Slowly seep out some water, but it's going to hold it.
Yep.
Now, if I have a southern wind, it's just going to go ahead and push everything on out.
Yeah.
So you're going to have more drastic lows. You'll have drastic lows and a little, not as high tides. So you're probably going to see a 4.5, maybe even 5 foot drop, depending on how long. There's one day last year where it blew out for south 3 days straight and dropped us over 6 foot of water.
Jeez.
And then there's days last year where after hurricanes came through, that it had a northern wind for almost a week straight. And we ran, especially down south, we ran between 5 to about 5 foot up. And it was just brutal to catch fish until you piece together where they're hanging out at.
Yeah,
get to them.
Third picnic table on the left.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or swing set. Yeah,
at that point, there's a dock that had last year that would keep their shiners in a big old like 40, 50 gallon tank. They keep out a dozen of them in this 40, 50 gallon tank. And man, I remember one day they had it set down. The dock was pretty low, probably naturally about 3 foot over. The top of the dock was probably about 3 foot over tidal influx. I go out the next day, that that tank is now tipped over, and there are no more shiners in that tank.
Oh man! I figure raccoons be all over them.
Oh, they had a little mesh net. But
okay. I got you.
Speaking of that, I have I get back in canals during certain times of the year. I had another great guide gimmick, which you'll find you have as a guide. You kind of have to have a few little gimmicks, make it memorable. My best gimmick was a blue heron named Richard. He got that name for a reason. And he was one of my favorite guide gimmicks ever. But me and Richard had a 4-month-long battle of keeping him off the shiners in the courts. He learned what the courts were, and I quickly learned how effective a super soaker is against blue herons.
Oh yeah.
So we had I called it the war between me and Richard. I think most days I lost, but there's a few days where I won.
Nothing wrong with that.
James Wheatley says, when they start dropping our lakes, it seems like the bite just disappears. Is it similar when fishing tidal, or they just school up and down the current and side the need like crazy?
Yeah, that's exactly what it does. I mean, almost identical. So when we're sitting there on a tidal lake, on a tidal river, out there, what they're doing is they're sucking all that bass and bait out to these shell bars, the places where there's lack of current in current. So what they're doing is it's bringing all that bait out to them, and it's just the best schooling times are on outgoing water. So more likely to catch a majority of fish, sometimes big fish. That's not always guaranteed, but more so just the 1 to 2 pound range, you're going to catch a bunch of them. There's days where you can go out there if we have a good hard pool with a lot of bait, where we can go out there and it's not unheard of to catch 30 fish on a guide trip. That means you had to have about 60 bites on average.
Oh yeah.
So so that's what it does for us. Little tip for you is find that deeper water when they start draining down your lakes like that. I fished a lot of lakes in Georgia that do that. Lake Altoona, everyone calls me crazy for wasting my time up in Lake Altoona in Georgia. Has a horrible rap for being a dead sea, but boat marinas were my best friend. I can win most tournaments out there in boat marinas, because anywhere that holds that deeper water, because that's where the fish are going to go. You got to think about it this way: is especially if you're not entitled, but they drain your lake down, fish naturally try to adjust their body pressure. Yeah. If we have a cold front move in, it's notoriously known as a high pressure front. The fish go down into deeper water. Well, if it's cold front, shouldn't they be going shallow, right? Yeah. So just fall into that deeper water because they're balancing out their body's pressure. So anywhere you have a deeper marina, a deeper spot, find out how low it is. You're gonna have to convert it. I don't know if you're on the U.S. I forgot what they're called now. I've been away from them for so long. But if there's controlled by a dam-based lake, just find how low the lake is for this time of year and put that there on your graph and go find those deeper areas and where they normally would be, and it's going to help you unlock that lake a lot better.
Absolutely. The marinas always have shad and bait fish all the time, so that's never plus.
Killer crankbait bites. I've been in what would be 16 to 20 foot of water, and I can't tell you how many spot I've up in Georgia. It's spot based mainly, so I can't tell you how many marinas I've been cranking almost 20 foot deep and catching 4 pound spot on a crankbait. Just loading the bag. There, trust me, they're there.
Oh yeah.
Make the adjustment. Best thing I can tell you to do is when that happens is make the adjustments, and put in a couple hours studying to see where the lake's usually at this time of year and where it's at currently, and figure out what that drop is. Put it into your graph, and your key stick success are right there. You'll be a lot easier finding fish because it's going to be an easy difference. It's going to be right in front of your face saying, hey, here they are, because they'll be there. Just graph a little bit, and you'll find them quick.
Absolutely.
Do you think electronics is a big topic in the industry now. Do you think electronics play as big as part in tidal fisheries as they do natural lakes like I have up here? Or?
That's a good question, because as I said earlier, that you got to turn your graphs off sometimes in the summer on those fish on shell bar. So it can very well hurt, but it can also help.
Yep.
The best electronics that you can have on a tidal river is Mega 360 from Humminbird.
Yep.
Forget live. People say that you can do the panoramic with live. It shows like 360. Doesn't matter. 360 is hands down the best on a tidal body of water, because it shows you the point at where you're aiming for. It shows you every once in a while where the fish move off to, so you'll get their pattern down with watching it. You can click it on. Hey, I'm not getting bit here anymore. Click it on. They're right there. Click it off. And that way you're not disrupting the fish with electronics. So for tidal fishery, absolutely it is important. Mega 360 is all you need, and good side imaging. I like the older side imagings from Humminbird, the KVD units or the ones beforehand, because they show fish on the bottom. That's going to be key. You want them to show up big, and you want to show fish on the bottom, because that's where the majority of the time they're going to be. And that's going to tell you what part of the feeding cycle they're in. If they're sitting straight on the bottom, they're probably not feeding. And if they're scattered out, they're probably not feeding. But if they tighten up and they come off that bottom, they're good to go. It's time to go ahead and put the butt whooping on them.
Absolutely.
So that's going to be my two keys: is 360 and side imaging. Older, it's controversial, but an older side imaging unit. That's going to be I'm telling you, it's going to be worth the money. You can get them on Facebook Marketplace for $400. And if you're going to the tidal industry, just plug and play with it, because most of them are. It's a great mapping unit for you on the side, and then on top of that, you plug that thing in, and you're going to see the difference. I guarantee it. It's going to make a sort of difference, because it's just something about them.
There you go, Rob. You can get one of those for your kayak.
Hey, I do it. Yeah. Hey, I still see some old guys around here still using flashers. So
I'm telling you, they got the job done back in the day on Lake Eufaula. So back when they were catching 100 fish a day, all over 3 pounds on Eufaula in its heyday. So
yeah,
there's something to them.
yeah. Eufaula's kind of weird now with no grass. I went there for the BFL regional last fall, and it's like, where's the grass? It was like way back in the back of the creeks and coves, but
So
Main Lake there's some like little bitty grass, but nothing like it was.
Funny story is I worked at the Hummingbird plant out there, and I lived out there for a period of time in Alabama on Lake Eufaula, and that place it's going to turn around.
Yeah,
the lily pad is doing what the St. John's is doing right now, and this is a huge topic I wanted to cover right here because it's close to my heart here, and it's on the river. The lily pads are the new eelgrass in the river, and the lily pads are now the new hydrilla in Eufaula. So the lily pads have made their resurgence in the river, and if you go by them on low tide, take the time, if you're ever out there, you pull that lily pad head up, it's all just mud and junk.
Yep.
On the bottom, they're a natural filter, and you can't kill a lily pad, but it's hard to kill a lily pad.
It's like bamboo. You ain't breaking that.
That's exactly it. Now you're going to catch 30% of your fish in the lily pads. It's just expected, but it's what's brought back the St. John's River. I have never seen more fish in any body of water in all of the Southeast, and people aren't going to like it when I say it. It is going to be the river that we once saw. That lily pad those lily pads have single-handedly saved the St. John's River.
Cool.
Single-handedly, and that's what Eufaula is going to be saved too. Just give it about 5 years, because that's what it took for the river to turn back around. Give Eufaula 5 years, and it'll be a big bass factory again. They're coming back around just in different forms, just different ball game. At the end of the day, as fishermen, that's our job to adjust, whether we like it or not.
Yep.
I've never seen the river. The river from when I got to it 2 years ago to now is a complete 360. I've never seen so many little fish. I mean, there's little guys, good healthy yearlings that are about 1.5 pounds. Like, they're just great. There's a great spawn that's going to grow up. There's a lot of big fish that are coming. We're getting caught again. We saw the Bassmaster. It was just a smoke show out there. That's what it's going to come to. That river's going to reclaim its throne here pretty soon. And I know they said that the river sucked. They can say that, but just watch out. I'm telling you. It's coming. It's going to be, you just learn how to fish some lily pads, and you're going to find out how quick it doesn't suck.
Yep. Well, see, Chickamauga. Well, I lived in Knoxville. Chickamauga did the same thing. They got rid of all the grass, and for years and years, grass started growing up, bass started, and now look at it now.
I can't wait. I can't wait to get back there. I got family up there, and I'm taking a little trip. I'm getting a new motor on my boat, so I'm excited for that, and that's probably going to be one of my first couple of trips after I break it in is up there because especially in September between I'm co-angling right now until I get my boat back right, but thankfully I have a boat I can run guides in, thankfully. But when I get my personal boat back right, I'm heading up there between I pretty much made it to our regionals for the BFLs. I'll be up there in Santee Cooper. I'm excited for that, but between there, I'm going to definitely be throwing a chatterbait up there in the Cypress Knees, and can't wait to see what that's going to look like.
Absolutely, man. You can't go wrong there. That's what the locals throw up there.
Absolutely.
Try a little bit of dynamite. I hear that catches them.
I mean, FWC's been using some electricity here lately to inspect how the population's been doing in a few local reservoirs and a few local places, and that's been doing pretty good for them from what I've been hearing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, TVA does it. CWRA and TVA does it on the Tennessee lakes and rivers all the time. It's amazing. They're going to one cove and shock it, and it's amazing to see how the size of fish. They'll count them. Have a guy like counting size and everything.
Yep, that's what they do out here, and you see that and you're like, man, well, you could have waited 5 minutes for me to make a cast right where that one was at.
Exactly.
Florida Fish Story says Nick gets to pre-fish with me on Sandy for the regional this year.
All right, hey, we'll do it. I'm more than willing to. No. We'll figure them out. Florida boys can catch fish. I've learned that. I've adopted that Florida boy mentality of we're going to go in there, we're going to do it our way, and we're going to do it right. And that's the Florida mantra right there. Is you pull up, You fish how you know how to fish, and you're going to catch them, and it works. My gracious, does it work?
Yeah, because I see a guy on Eufaula Regional. He had a center console like a bay boat, and he was running with the bass boats like no problem.
If in Florida, if you want to stay competitive in these local tournaments, your boat has to at least run 70.
Yep.
Because these boys ride out. I'm building a Bass Cat right now, a Pantera. I'm building that out. I don't like being left behind anymore because they'll leave you behind and they'll fish all your
stuff.
Yeah, James Wheely says Florida boys caught the fire out of them at Eufaula last year.
Oh yeah,
I guarantee they ran up the river because we're.
Oh yeah, they did. They did. Yep,
flippers.
They did. Yep.
We're flippers, so I've had to adopt that. That's been the tough one for me.
Heard that. They say you're fishing cold this year. You got any tips or kind of suggestions for some of our co's out there, including me?
Man, I'll tell you, it's been the best. It's really been humbling to open up my eyes as a co-angler again because it's been hard. I've stepped away from the tournament scene and been running my own boat. Having to get back to the basics.
Yep.
That's the hardest thing for me.
It is.
That's Rob right there.
Yep. There you go.
That's big forwards right there.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for my co-anglers is A, trust your gut.
Yep.
B, don't be afraid to do what you do best.
Yep.
That is, if you would like to throw a crankbait and if conditions allow it and it makes sense and your gut says pick up that crankbait and go put that 4-pounder in the boat. That's the best thing I can tell my co-anglers. That's been the best thing. I've got my gut back in me, so to speak, being a co-angler. Because you're behind him, you don't have any electronics. You're looking at what he's doing and following what he's doing. And that has been the biggest thing for me is it's made me so much better. I fished the lake the other day. I was boating on a lake I never fished before on another day. And I came out and I found a school of about 30 fish, and I caught my fair share of fish, and that was just all instinct. I'd never been there before, barely used the graph. And that's been the biggest thing is the co-anglers trust your instinct. Read what the boater's doing. Don't live off of what he's doing. Fish it in your style. Because we all have our own style.
Oh, yeah.
Ever since I've gotten down here, I've actually kind of adapted a finesse kind of style, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And that's what you're going to have to do, is you're going to have to fish your way, but make those moves that you need to make.
Absolutely.
James Wheely said it's been a tough year for him. He hasn't had a top 10 yet. So.
Yep. It's been a tough bite.
Yeah. Would you?
Yep. Go ahead.
No. Barking Rubers made it in.
Hey, there he is. There he is.
So give me your 3 tips. Give me 3 tips if I've, never been to a tidal fishery and want to go down there and just explore. 3 tips.
Oh, 3 tips. Coming in, I'm going fishing on a tidal fishery I've never fished before. And sometimes it feels this way on the river. If I get off of it for a while, if I go get hares, chain, and fish the other lakes around, it feels like I'm starting brand new. The best thing to do is get out there, unload the boat, have your true north and true south set, read your tide, and kind of how we've talked about, hey, I want to go this way for this tide and that way for this tide. Oh, excuse me, guys. My phone is low. Give me 2 seconds here.
All right, no problem. Yeah, I'm having lightning flash on my window here, so sorry about that, guys.
So if I see your hair go straight up, that means
yeah, it's close. It's close.
Yeah,
Barker Riggers, you're absolutely right, man. It's been tough, man.
It has.
Yeah, Douglas, which I usually kill it. I mean, 13 pounds to win Douglas a couple weekends ago is really unusual.
Really?
Yep.
I don't think I've seen 13 pounds win a tournament up here in a long time.
Douglas is loaded of fish, too, usually. I don't know where they were.
All right, this should be good right here. Thank you. See, my phone can't talk like I can. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, I hear that, man. Know the feeling.
It can't hold up with me. Hold up. This charger's not working. All right, let's try this again.
Hey, we know all about Hey, man, we all know about technical difficulties, so it's part of the gig, as they say.
Hey, nothing. Hey, we started with technical difficulties.
Yeah. When does it not happen? We can't. Never.
Yep.
Yep. Let's try this one again.
All right.
Let's see if this works for you.
There you
Okay,
go.
we're back. All
There
right.
we go.
All right. Rocking and rolling.
Let's rock and roll. So,
All right. Tips for if you show up at a tidal fishery, what do you do?
make your true north and true south. Take
Yep.
the boat off the trailer. Don't expect anything. That's my first thing. Mindset is getting in the right mindset of expecting. You may not find them today, but put your hours in. Look, just look for any high spot that changes. So you're checking your graph ahead of time, looking for anywhere it might be a high spot, looking for there might be crashing water onto a point. Just run it, put hours in, try to figure out which way the tide's moving and what direction, and just doing your studying ahead of time and just trying to get you some waypoints out there. Run them, and eventually you will have something happen. And then it's blind luck. I'll be honest with you. There's not really a science to it. I've fished 1 million shell bars in one day and caught 2 fish. And there's been days where I've fished 2 and caught 30 and 40.
Yep.
It's just, Ike said it the best, never give up. That's all you're doing is never giving up.
Keep on grinding. Keep on grinding.
All right, so I have a question I like to ask because my wife bakes, and pretty much if I don't ask this question, come back with an answer, I'd probably sleep on the couch or maybe even outside. So, what's your favorite homemade cookie?
That's going to have to be chocolate chip. That is the best boat day snack.
There you go.
That's going to be the best boat day
All
snack.
right.
Can't beat that, man. And the chocolate chunk, can't beat it.
Especially when you get you take a sip of that and some cold water after you haven't drank for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
It's just like putting GDs in the bottle. They just come right back to life.
Ooh. Tell you what.
That's a good way to put it.
That's fisherman G juice right there. That or
Absolutely.
Juice right there. Yeah. There we go. Well, I've been saying I'm going to allude back to it. There's one more little drop of knowledge I do want to put on the river before we bring this thing to a close.
Yep.
If I have to answer some questions afterwards, I don't try to hold y'all too long past. But
no, you good, man.
There's a big thing I want to circle back to. Everyone talks about tide, and I spoke about forage earlier, and bait. Their biggest thing is knowing bait in the river. So I've talked about natural threadfin. We have wild golden shiners down here in the state of Florida, and that's bass candy on the sun.
Oh yeah.
But none of that matters when the shrimp pull into the St. Johns River.
Yep.
And that's the problem is a lot of these regional tournaments for these BFLs come in during the shrimp run. It makes it tough because when those shrimp flood the river, it's a whole nother world. It's a whole nother style.
Yeah.
So the guys who have a tough time on the St. Johns, you got to understand that anytime later than June, July, and sometimes depending on the weather, September, and that ballpark all the way up to October, transitioning into December, you're fighting shrimp too.
Yeah.
They have every type of bait that they could possibly think of. The best thing you can do is just run and try to find water where it's not going to be as effective on the main river and just hope for the best. I mean, the St. Johns River, the key to unlocking the St. Johns River is understanding where the tide is at, what tide's doing and where it's at, understanding the weather conditions affecting it, and understanding what is in the water at that time. During the winter months, up until about right now, there's not going to be as much bait, maybe some shad, but their main forage is going to be shiners. So you're going to have to take advantage of baits that mimic that.
Yep.
Now, this time of year, they're going to start chewing on eels a little bit more and shad. So you're going to have to, especially in that September ballpark too, I'll say more so September, the shrimp will start heading out the river, and they're going to start focusing more on the mass amount of shad that have come in. So that time of year, now I'm going to focus more on the crankbait. Now I'm going to focus more so on a little more aggressive bait-based patterns, like American shad, threadfin, stuff like that, and even some shiners. So you just got to understand what part of the year you're in. If it's colder for Florida standards, you're probably looking at shiners. So you want to aim for more of that. If it's hot, dead heat of the summer, you're going to want to run south, way south.
Yep.
You're going to want to try to focus on throwing something that mimics that shrimp. And if you run south, you can get away from it. So more so eels and shad and stuff like that. And then if you're anytime after that, you can just get some old school fishing with a crankbait. So it's just
all that.
depends on the time of year. If you understand those things, you're going to be good for the St. Johns River. You're going to be ready to go. And just understanding that you're not going to whack them. I had one of my good buddies. He qualified for the Florida State team with Bassmaster. He went out and caught 26 pounds day one. And he had one fish that got off that would have pushed him over 30. Day two, he came out and he caught not the first fish. And he is one of the best artificial guys on that.
Dang.
Made him to the team, but didn't catch the fish the very next day. And he is one of the best artificial fishermen on that river.
I feel his pain.
Be prepared for that.
Yep. Oh yeah, it'll humble you. It'll humble you really quick.
It will be. And one more story before that I'd like to tell is
yep.
the best thing about when I said never give up. The best thing I can say for it is I was fishing down there with a Bass Pro Shop, guiding for Bass Pro Shop. Johnny Morris was in town. This is a big event, big ordeal. I pull up day one, have some pretty important people on the back of my boat. We catch 3 fish all day, biggest being a 5-pounder. Everyone's weighing in 7s and 8s. And I'm like, man, my rotation's dried up. We're going to have to scramble tomorrow. And I got that gut feeling in me, just pounding in my chest. Run it. Run that rotation. Run it. And that was 0. The next day we pull up with pushing over 30 pounds with almost an 11-pounder in the boat.
Dang.
We take the biggest bass for the tournament.
Nice.
Hey, nailed it, man. That intuition, you nailed it.
It's intuition, never giving up, and just knowing the conditions. That's the key to every bass lake that I fished on, from Virginia to Florida to everywhere. It's conditions, intuition, and don't quit. Be stubborn.
Absolutely.
Well, we'd like to give you time to talk about sponsors, people who helped you along the way, anything you got coming up. So take a couple minutes and do that if you don't mind.
This one right here. This has been my number one guy. That is Patrick Gray's name. You can look him up on Facebook or Badass Base. He has been one of my biggest supporters. I have met him out fishing a tournament on a local lake in Georgia, and he socked it to me for weeks on end, and I finally figured some things out. And I always tell that story to mess with him, but he is at some of the biggest times that I've needed some support as a fisherman, he's provided it. I mean, he's a great guy, fantastic bait painter. I mean, if you have it, I've sent him baits that had paint on it. He's painted it exactly the way that the company could never paint it. He is the biggest, and he sent me some baits. He's done some stuff for me for free, and I could never ask him for it. So he is my number one sponsor, hands down. I will always support him. I'll always buy product from him. I'm due to put in an order with him. Matter of fact, here pretty soon. I have some ideas I want to try out. So he's definitely going to get my nod of approval first before I go and buy a Strike King or anything, because he can make it just the way you want. And that's really the only one so far. I support 13 Fishing big time. They got bought out right by Rapala. So right now I can't say that I'm on the guide staff. I'm the guide staff anymore right now, but I'm a big believer in 13 Fishing rods, and their price point is fantastic for what I do. I beat the sticks up daily, and they don't break. So 13 Fishing is bang for your buck. They have anything that you can desire, and if you have an idea, they have it available. So that's my two.
Cool.
All right.
Got a quick question then.
All right, what do we got?
When you're running spot to spot, how far from your next spot do you shut the big motor down and drift in?
Good question. Obviously, if I have outgoing water and I'm running towards that outgoing water, I'm killing that motor a little bit closer, but about 15 yards on average, about 10 to 15 yards, depending on the time of the year. I don't want those fish to know I'm here. I like to set my sonar off the side about 80 foot. So that way I can see what I need to, and that way I can make sure I have my graph on telling me where the spot's going to be at. So that way I'm coasting up on them, not really spooking them off. I'd rather take more time and be silent and be able to get a good, clear idea where those fish are at than have them on a little bit on edge and do it quicker. Because sometimes fast and tournament fishing isn't always better.
Exactly.
All right, buddy. Well, hey, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I will definitely watch this show again. because there's some things that you were saying that made sense to me.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
trying to figure out the James River and the Potomac River and stuff like that. And
We can almost have another subject on that one.
Oh yeah.
Y'all know my social media, so feel free to shoot me a question.
oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
Well,
And appreciate you coming on, and man, good luck the rest of the year, and continued success for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll see you at regionals then.
Good deal, man.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
All right,
See you, man.
all right. Bye.
all right.
All right, man. A lot of good info there, man. As I said, I've been around Tidal, but it's been a little while, so good points there.
We're well, let's see. Last time I was at Tidal Water was Saturday.
Well, you definitely be reviewing this 2 or 3 times with your notebook. I don't blame you.
Yeah, I actually should have had him on last week. That way I could have learned a little bit before I went down there.
I hear you.
Yeah, but no. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Another great week we had. We'll figure it out. Got some new things coming. Got some stuff to talk about, and everybody be safe.
Yeah, we got the ladies tournament a couple weeks in Guntersville. I'm gonna try to make it down for their weigh-in. So if y'all in the area or anywhere close, come out and see the ladies at the LBA weigh-in. I'm sure they're gonna sack them. So, but appreciate you guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, and appreciate y'all.
All right, take care, man.
Peace out.